This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello, and welcome to the Late Late Show with me, BJ Stever, on the Sunday night. This week, we continue our mission to find out how to build schools filled with joy. We're looking at how we can use behaviour systems and pastoral systems to bring joy to schools with our guest, Khalil Rouse. Tune in and talk it out with us tonight.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Hi everyone, and thanks for tuning in again on my second show for TTR. Tonight we're going to continue our mission to find out how to build schools filled with the joy. This night I've got like a potentially kind of contentious topic, which is behaviour and how behaviour systems and great behaviour systems can build schools which are filled with joy. I'm going to be honest, this is going to be a bit of a CPD learning experience for me. I am a teaching and learning guy. It's not my speciality. And so really, the whole thing really has been a CPD mission for me, so that I find out how to build these schools filled with joy, and hopefully I can bring that to the places where I work, and hopefully you can bring a bit of that to the places where you work. As always, I want to involve everyone in the conversation. So please, if you've got something to say, if you can hear me, if you want to kind of shout out, if you have a burning question or you've got a burning statement to make, then what you can do is you can either text in or you can call in via the app. So I really want to hear what you've got to say today. So make sure that you're calling in. So obviously the behaviour conversation has been firing off on Twitter as well. And to be honest with you, it's turned quite negative. And so I've actually titled this show unofficially the Sunday Blues Buster. And the reason for that is I kind of want to take away from this kind of negative angle of working in schools. I love working in schools. It's one of the best things you can do, and I think sometimes we kind of get bogged down in the negativity behind it. And so this whole joyful schools thing, like we can take some of the things that we're doing and really build around that, and maybe like make schools a little bit more fun and joyful to work in for everyone. And behavior is one of those things. So I'll be finding out whether it's possible to bring joy with a behavior system. It seems weird, doesn't it? And we're going to really talk to Khalil about kind of his experiences with it. So last month, I had a bit of feedback from my wife. She said, look, you rushed the start of the show. You didn't tell anyone who you were. And so I've got to kind of respond to that a little bit. I can't not take the feedback, can I? Especially from that person. So I'm BJ Stever. I work as a director of science in a school in Salford. And I've been working in education for about 14 years. I worked abroad for a bit. And to be honest with you, my career has gone through like peaks and troughs. And I've not always been happy. But recently, I've become really happy. I work in like state schools in quite mixed communities. And I just love what they bring to communities. And so that's why I'm kind of on this mission to like think about how I can bring more joy to the communities that I work in. And so that's kind of what we did with Dave McPartlin last month. And he gave us some great ideas on kind of like how we work with communities, how we build these kind of like big ideas in schools, and how you dare to dream, and how you can kind of like bring that with your staff and your kids. And this month, I really want to talk about this behavior thing, and kind of because it can be the thing that makes or breaks someone's experience in a school. So let's give you some background about Khalil. He was a former TTR host. He's currently a DSL at ARC Pioneer, and he was a maths teacher, and he's had a whole host of jobs in pastoral and teaching, and kind of has veered away from maths. He does a bit of training on pastoral. So we're going to get him on shortly, and we're going to find out what he thinks about like how we build great behavior systems. So let's get him on. Let's just click the calling button. As this is my second show, so you've got to bear with me in terms of the technical side of it. Bear with me. Let's get him on.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
I've got you, Khalil. How are we doing?
This is nostalgic. BJ, good evening.
Good evening.
This is so strange.
He's back. He's back. Right?
Mate, do you know what? Let me just
Yeah.
before I even start, I'm just going to congratulate you because I didn't know it was your second show. I thought it was an early show. I didn't know it was your second one, and
Yeah.
I'm going to give you I'll give you the plaudits on a very confident introduction.
Oh,
You
thank you.
s-
Thank you.
Genuinely, when you said it was your second show, I was pleasantly surprised. So I thought you're sounding very competent, very confident for a second show. I remember being shaky
Yeah, on the
on my
nervous
on my
scale, I'm
second show.
probably at an 8, mate. I'm probably at an 8.
It's so much better when you've got someone to actually speak to on the show. That
Definitely,
was I
definitely.
always found that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on. I was like so buzzed when like I got you as a guest and like Tom kind of linked us up and I was like, oh, this is brilliant for what I want to find out about. And even just looking through like your kind of Twitter and your LinkedIn, it's kind of I've already started to change my mind about how I've been talking about behavior and actually used the word pastoral quite a lot. And I was like, oh,
Yeah,
this is. Like, hang on a second. I've completely missed an angle here. Like I said, this is but I'm a teaching and learning guy, when it comes to classrooms, when it comes to like kind of what you do minute by minute and assessment and like checks for understanding, that's me, right? And
yeah,
so this is a real CPD experience for me, right? And then I was kind of reading through kind of where you come from, watch a couple of videos online. I was like, oh, pastoral, that's quite an interesting thing that I've just missed out. Maybe we're concerned with behavior when actually it's a pastoral thing.
yeah. So I've never called it. I know there are behavior policies, but when we
Yeah,
think
yeah,
of the actual systems in schools, I've always called it a pastoral system because everything we do or should do in school when with regards to behavior, welfare, well-being is all about coming from a place of care. Doesn't matter if
yeah,
it's a situation where you're disciplining or where you're supporting, it always should come from a place of care. So
yeah,
it's the behavior is a subset of that, and the influencing behaviors through choices and blah 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 and consequences. That's a subset. It's all about the pastoral is the care. It comes hand in hand with safeguarding. It's under safeguarding. You
yeah,
can't have
yeah,
you
yeah.
can't be a school that prioritizes safeguarding and not have a caring aspect that kind
I
of
see
runs
it.
as a golden thread through what you're doing. But I just want to correct the bio for a little because I heard the bio you
Yeah,
gave me and I
yeah.
was like, oh,
Sorry,
that's not.
go on.
I'm not there. I'm not there anymore. That one's out of date. But
Okay.
but yeah, I used so I used to work as a DSL in a school in London, but I've
Yeah,
left that role now. I now work for a multi academy trust in a kind of a cross trust role,
yeah,
focusing on safeguarding and attendance. But then so my job usually essentially takes me into all the different schools in the trust, working primarily with either their safeguarding leads, their head teachers, their attendance leads, and then
yeah.
it still kind of goes into the pastoral world. There's always that crossover. And as
Yeah,
you were correct, yeah, my own experiences, yeah, head of year, pastoral stuff, safeguarding leads, and now I'm involved with the trust, trying to help other schools to improve their systems basically, and evaluate
mm,
their own systems and be that evaluative third eye, so to speak, to quality assure
yeah,
what they're doing, give them advice, and then see. It's a bit like an education consultant, is what my missus tells me I am.
yeah,
And I said,
yeah.
okay, that's
It's
where I am at the
how,
moment.
and how did you feel about that? How do you enjoy it? Is it great? It's because obviously pastoral, you are hands on, aren't you? Like you're
Yeah,
in there day to day. You're front facing, solidly front facing, right? There's no
yeah.
messing around. Your hands are in the water, like full on. How have you found it, like moving to the trust position?
Yeah, do you know what? Honestly, not to brag, because I don't like talking too much about my specific role and making
Yeah,
the people who work 5 days a week in a school
yeah,
feel a type of way about it. But I've not regretted my decision one bit.
mm,
So my role is a hybrid role essentially.
yeah,
So at the moment, I still teach maths twice a week in a
yeah,
local school that is part of the trust. And um, but then the other 3 days a week, I do my cross trust role. So I've got a bit of a hybrid, and it gives me a lot more flexibility than I've ever been used to. So
yeah,
I've had I've had no reservations or regrets about making the career shift essentially into a
yeah,
less. I'm not based in one school anymore, basically. So I'm
yeah.
less on the front line, but I still teach 2 days a week. So I get the
That's
joy
awesome.
from that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so you're
it
still
does.
there. You're still in it with everyone. That's cool. That's really cool. So yeah, sorry, I've deviated from the question list that I sent you, but it doesn't matter.
That's
Like I
it's a
said, so,
conversation.
uh,
It's a conversation. It's a
that's it.
conversation.
That's it.
It goes where it goes. I
Um,
love the fact you've got people
yeah.
interacting in the chat as well, which is beautiful.
Yeah, we've got people in. Like, keep talking to us, guys. Like, if you text in or call in, and if you've got a question to ask Khalil or me, then go for it, guys. It's really nice to have the interactivity, isn't it? So look, given your wealth of experience, like I'm going to go in. Actually, first of all, how is your summer holiday going? Apologies, I haven't asked you that important question.
My summer holidays. Do you know what? Weather, like you know what it's like in this country. The weather's trying to do its best to ruin certain days and certain aspects. It's been good recently.
Yeah,
I think you can't. There's nothing better than time with the family.
yeah,
Um, and then it's just trying to just keep. I've got two little ones, so it's more about trying to keep the little ones entertained so they don't drive you
yep,
insane. That's
yeah, yeah,
that's aim of each day. Aim of each day is what can we do to keep them entertained in the
yeah,
house, outside the house, on the road, wherever, to keep them entertained. So both my wife and I keep our sanity, and my
yeah.
4-year-old um, makes good choices throughout the day. So it's my summer holiday's good. Yeah, it's been a great
Yeah,
one so far. A lot of
yeah,
stuff happening this month, so I'm looking forward to
yeah.
that as well.
Super, super. Right,
Yours?
should we get? Yeah, it's good. It's really, really good. Same thing. I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. I've been very lucky. They've been taken on holiday by my wife for like 4 days, and I've
Hold
just
on.
had.
So repeat that one more time.
They were taken on holiday by my wife for 4 days. Yeah, I know. It's
So you're
what
so
can I
you
say?
are you at home alone without the kids or without
I
your kids?
was at home alone. They've come back today, so if you hear any kind
Okay.
of like anything in the background, that's because they're absolutely shattered. They spent 4 days at a park in Paris. I probably won't mention it by name, but they've been there. Yeah, so
And
and
I imagine you missed them. You were crying each day, missing them dearly,
that's basically what I was doing. Yeah,
longing for them to come home.
longing for them, along with the list of jobs I had to do.
She left you a list of chores, right?
No, yeah, but yeah, it was longer than my arm. Right, should we get into a bit of behaviour and pastoral, really? Given your wealth of experience, like what do you think are like the hallmarks of great pastoral systems which bring that joy to all? I think you've already mentioned this idea of care underpinning everything,
Yeah.
but then like let's unpack that. Like, what does that look like to you?
Right. I think the one when I've seen it work the best, it starts from it starts being values based. So that
Mm,
means the school has decided we either kind of autonomously or it could have if the school's going through a transition, then they've done it usually with the buy-in of the incumbent staff and kids. But if it's like a new school or they're going through
mm,
kind of like a new leader, for example, the leader has to establish what values underpin, or not even underpin, what values underpin and guide everything that the school is about. And
mm,
the school needs to decide that before you do anything else. Once you
yeah,
know what values matter, you need to get a whole bunch of buy-in from your staff and your pupils, and the values need to be like ever present in all
mm,
everything that the school does, whether it's from your assemblies to your signage to your the stuff that kids have on their maybe it's their planners or their whatever their books,
mm,
whatever. The values need to be visible, breathable, and lived every day. And once
yeah,
you've got that, what in the best schools you create a pastoral system that is in line with those values. So everything that you do or you believe in for your pastoral system, you say, this is what we do because of this value. This is what
yeah,
maybe your value is a good one. You often have anything to do with kindness, care, all
yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of stuff.
yeah,
So that's kind of the most kind of common themes you
yeah,
get in your values. And
yeah,
everything you then do when you're talking to the kids and the staff about how we manage behavior, so to speak, what our pastoral system is about. Everything comes back to the values. When you're
mm,
communicating with parents, you go back to the values. And that you need that first. And then it's about the minutiae about what the system actually looks like. But you need to be able to bring your pastoral system when you're challenged on it, when you have the confrontational conversations or the challenging conversations with the parents or the governors or the externals, whoever, or the kids, you need to
yeah,
have a set of core values that underpin everything. That if everyone agrees that these are our values, then you need to agree that this is a system. You need to understand the why behind everything we're doing. So I would say
yeah,
the first step is get your values set. as a
Do you
school, so
see?
you know. Go on.
Do you see any like common core values that like run through the schools that you've worked in before?
They're all the
Like,
same.
yeah, yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking. Eh? Like,
Nah,
go on. It like,
they're
give
all
me one.
they're all the
Give me
same.
one that's
So
like,
you could probably talk. You could probably get people in the chat. If anyone's listening
mm,
in the Podbean app,
yeah,
they could probably start typing values that, if the synonyms exist across not all schools, a
yeah,
lot of schools, there are synonyms for these values. You
yeah,
often have something to do with care, kindness. One of
yeah,
those,
yeah,
nice, just being
yeah,
nice to people. You have
yeah,
something about either inspiration or excellence or achievement or
yeah,
just doing well. You
yeah,
have one usually about either resilience, not giving up, modeling like determination,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
something to do with that. And you have something to do with either community.
yeah,
Um, you have ones often to do with being like either honesty, integrity. I see ones about citizenship and being just a good citizen.
mm,
You see values about, um, yeah, I'd say those usually they're tied into one of
yeah,
those 10 or so different things I'm saying.
yeah,
They
yeah,
usually have the schools with values, with their values set out. You see a lot of commonality between them. The differences happen when you start to talk to kids and you start to look around the school and you ask yourself, as an external or as someone who's worked in a number of schools and has seen a lot of values, you start to think about, oh, what do these values actually look like? Yeah,
mm,
you're saying that your school has the value of kindness, but what does that mean? Have you taught
yeah,
the kids what kindness actually means, or are you just expecting them to know what kindness is? Have you
yeah,
taught them how do you be resilient, or are you just telling kids to be resilient?
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah,
you don't just state your values. You need, if you
yeah,
believe in them, you need to be teaching them, and you need to get the buy-in. And you
yeah,
only get the buy-in when the kids and staff understand what it looks like on a day-to-day basis, in
yeah,
lessons, in the playgrounds, before school, after school, on social media, all that kind of stuff. You need to be quite explicit with kids to say, well, this is what kindness means online. This is
yeah,
what determination means in your classroom, and so on. And when you have that, and to tie that back into your pastoral system, it just means when things go wrong, you need to communicate through your values again, not like a robot,
mm,
but you need to reinforce them to say, right, we know what we're trying to do here. We're trying to be kind.
yeah,
Was that interaction in line with our values of a school? And they would be able to clearly tell you no. And then you can maneuver through that, to
yeah,
kind of steer them onto the better paths.
yeah. I'm gonna just let's just read one of the chats that have come in here. So Paul FOZ, Paul Foz. I'm in primary, and those ones are always used and displayed. Lots of discussion about it though. Sometimes that works, or we have to repeat it over and over until July, and then repeat it the year after. So I think this is, yeah, it's a big thing, isn't it? Trying to get kids to understand something like resilience is such a high concept kind of
Yeah.
idea, and yeah, it must be really difficult in primary school to get that across. Me and you are quite lucky to work in secondaries where the kids can like write a word like, well, hopefully write a word like resilience, whereas in primary it
Mm.
must be really difficult to get that over. Yeah, so it must be quite a big thing to get that embedded into your school. um
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I agree. It's a different,
yeah,
primary's a different beast, definitely.
yeah,
Um, and as kids, they're cognitively, kids are not, as we know, obviously they're in primary school, they're not as developed yet to be able to manage their
yeah,
emotions, let
yeah,
alone then be able to manage emotions and function resilient in a resilient way in a classroom. Like there, so it's about what does, yes, resilience. You want everyone to be resilient, but what does resilience mean for a 7-year-old? It will mean something quite different
yeah,
to resilience for a 15-year-old. And I think
yeah,
you need, if you're a primary school leader, you need to be realistic about your expectations. You need to keep them high, but you need to be realistic. And the way you communicate with your kids and your parents and your staff needs to be it needs to be a high expectation, but also needs to be a realistic expectation
mm,
as well. So the kids feel like they can actually, it's achievable. There's no point
mm,
having expectations that a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old thinks, well, I can never do that. So what's the point? So
yeah,
you do need to
yeah,
be, you need to be quite strategic about what
yeah,
these words mean to a 6-year-old compared to an 11-year-old, because the gap, those 5 years, there's a huge gap in maturity, development, and so on and so forth. So
yeah.
yeah, there's a lot to it for sure.
Khalil, when you talk about kind of like how you kind of define that, how you get kids to learn how to be resilient and etc. How does that look when you come into like a strategic plan about it? Like if you're a teacher in a school, what are you hearing from your leadership team that's like,
So
do you know, like, or what are
yeah,
you doing as a teacher? What does that look like? Do you know, like, because it's all right to say we need to teach the kids about resilience, but you know what comes to mind is, I don't know, straight away when actually it was that primary conversation we just had then. I was like, hang on a second, you the bit that I picked out was it looks different to like a child who's 7 years old compared to a child who's like 13 years old. Like in, let's say you work in a secondary school, like how do you know what to teach them in terms of resilience? And like, let's say you're leading a secondary school, what does that
yeah.
strategic conversation look like?
Well, that's the thing. It needs to be it not. I like the school I used to work at. We used to codify everything,
Hmm.
and that had its pros and its cons. It had its pros because
Yeah,
it was written into policy. So
yeah,
when we're talking about I know when we're talking about this is our school ethos, this is our school culture, this is what we stand for. When we stated what our values were, we had to sit down as a leadership team and we had to decide, well, yes, we know this word integrity is really important, but what does that actually mean for pupils? What does that mean for staff? What does that mean for
mm,
parents? What does integrity look like? And we decided as a team, and we wrote our own kind of um, summary, a couple lines, couple sentences on what it looks like. And then we actually went further and said, well, that's what it looks like for pupils. And then when we have our comms to parents, we say, well, that's what it looks like for parents. And this is what it
yeah,
looks like for staff. And it got codified. And that's
yeah,
the start. You need to be able to have something to point to and say, well, this is what we're about. Then
yeah,
it's next about, well, okay, so now we've got year sevens, year eights, year nines, year tens, year elevens in the school. How do we get them to buy in for
yeah,
what we've created? And that's
yeah,
where you have to be really tactical about your whether it's your form times, your assemblies. It's about celebrating. It's about explaining what it's all about, getting the kids to come up with their own ideas. Can they even contribute? Can they, when you do your surveys and so on and so forth, can they contribute ideas about what it actually means to them? And then can that shape your policy as well? And
mm,
once kids see that they are actually playing a part in the development of the school culture. That you even get even more buy-in them. So they don't feel like
yeah, yeah,
things just being done to them. They feel like things are being done with them.
with them,
And I
yeah,
think
yeah,
you need it's top down. And a lot of
yeah,
people talk about this whole top down, top down. It is massively top down.
yeah,
You need a leader who's
yeah,
really passionate about teaching positive behaviors, and you need a leader who's therefore going to galvanize and inspire a team of senior leaders who are going to do the same thing. And that
yeah,
filters down to your middle leaders and so on and so forth. So it is massively top down. And
yeah,
once the teachers buy into it, then you get kids realizing that in every interaction, the teachers are all kind of singing from the same hymn sheet. They're not repeating things like robots, but
mm,
they believe in what it means and they're using the language in a kind of human way, not in a
yeah,
robotic way, but a human way. And they're talking that language, they're speaking the values so
yeah,
that the kids are like, oh yeah, yeah. And then what you find is often kids then end up speaking very ironically or sarcastically or in taking the mick basically
yeah,
of their own school values, if you get what I mean, like in a kind of,
yeah,
well, you're not being that's not having integrity or that's not very resilient. And they talk to their mates, you've got to be
yeah,
first class. You've got to be a good
yeah,
citizen. You've got to
yeah,
be a good
yeah.
citizen.
Yeah, that's
And
not the
that's,
way. That's not the way it's used in our school, and it's really cool to hear that. And even when they were doing it mockingly, that's not the way. I love it, do you know, because it means that we've they've heard, doesn't it?
yeah, indeed. It's
Yeah,
indoctrination.
yeah,
Like in the most positive way. If you want to
yeah,
create, we always talk about these cultures and these communities, and it's all wishy-washy because everyone's like, what does it mean? What does it mean? And it's
yeah,
all about people buying in and believing, and actually the direction that the school is going in, the students believe that is possible, the staff
yeah,
believes that is possible, and then when you walk in, you feel like everyone's pulling in the same direction, everyone's speaking a similar language, and when things go wrong, people are approaching it in the right way, and so on.
mm,
That's the culture that takes so it's but there's so many elements to that that can derail it, as you know. There's so many things
yeah,
that can happen
yeah,
internally or externally. So it's not
yeah,
easy. It's not
yeah,
easy, and it's a journey, and it takes hard work and
yeah.
years of like focus from leadership and middle leaders and teachers, everyone basically.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think that's a great time to go to our sponsors, right? So we get a little bit of a break because I want to pick up on this when we come back from the break. But I think we're going to hear from our sponsors for 5 minutes, and the I'm loving this so far. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm just going to give some shout outs to some listeners. Judy, you're listening from Sutton Coldfield. She says, this discussion is so refreshing. It's great listening to real people about education, which I mean, it's great talking to real people about education. You know, it's fantastic to have someone on who's so experienced. So we're going to run some ads and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Here's a word from our sponsors.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading. Introducing My New Term, the revolutionary technology application connecting schools and candidates directly. Whether you're a school seeking to streamline your recruitment process or a candidate searching for your next role in education, My New Term has the solution. Developed by a former teacher, the technology at My New Term now connects tens of thousands of candidates with schools every month by digitizing the recruitment process. As a candidate, you can search for jobs, set up recommended jobs, and save time by applying directly to schools via a standardized online process. No more completing manual and repetitive application forms. Employers can streamline processes and save time utilizing the leading applicant tracking system for schools and multi-academy trusts. Recruitment in education has been broken for too long. My New Term is on a mission to change just that. Visit mynewterm.com to learn more, search all the latest opportunities, or schedule a demo. My New Term, shaping the future of education recruitment.
Hi everyone, it's Tom here from Teachers Talk Radio, just dropping by to tell you about our annual history teaching extravaganza, Teachers Talk History, which is coming at you live in Manchester on the 21st of September. The tickets are completely free for classroom teachers, amazing speakers, brilliant contributors, and a fantastic opportunity to network with fellow professionals. Grab your free ticket today at ttradio.org/events, and we will see you there.
And we're back. If you've never been to one of the Teachers Talk networking meetings, they're superb. They're really good. I've been to 2 now, and they're absolutely excellent. You get so much from them, and they're free. Absolutely brilliant. So if you're a history teacher, make sure you get a ticket for that. Right, so we're back. I'm back with Khalil, and we're talking about pastoral systems and how they bring joy to schools. We've been having a discussion about the values and how they're very much underpinned by the values. Khalil, I wanted to pick up with this idea. You've talked about how you communicate to the teachers in the school and how you communicate those values, and then how that impacts on the pastoral systems and the pastoral decisions you make in within the school and to the kids. I want to pick up, how do you get that over to the community, and how do you get your community on board? Because sometimes communities don't share your values, right?
Yeah, it's tricky. That's one of the biggest stumbling blocks, and it's often
Mm,
the bit that you have more limited control and influence over. So different schools do different things. Like I
mm,
said, I've worked in a school where we were fortunate to be a startup school, and that means we were able
mm,
to start in the way we wanted to be. And we were able, what we had was, before any child joined us in year 7, we would always, one of our head teacher and another leader would always it started with the head teacher and a leader doing home visits, but then ended up
mm,
being the senior leadership team essentially either did virtual kind of like home visits, so to speak, with parents and carers with the children before they've even joined. And that was like, we're talking, how long did it usually take? About 10 to 15 minutes,
mm,
um, where we would find out about the child, and also be an opportunity for us to almost like sell ourselves as a school. And again, talking about everything that our school stands for, understanding the family circumstances as best as you can without
mm,
feeling like without them feeling like you're invading your privacy, but it'll be an opportunity for them to build relationships before the child's even joined. And that's
mm,
been fun. That was pivotal, I believe, in in selling what we were trying to do as a school. And I
Yeah.
know in a lot of
Yeah.
schools, that's either not the norm or is practically a massive issue. So
Yeah.
it's there, but there needs to be either it's about harnessing. I think to get community buy-in, you need to harness any kind of event where you know you're going to get a lot of parents and carers turning up.
Mm.
So you're anything where throughout the year, early in the year, if you've got any kind of shows, obviously parents' evening is an obvious one, any kind of shows, events, performances, um, summer fairs at the end of the year, blah, blah, blah. All the events where
Mm.
you know parents will want to come because either their child's involved or they want to find out about how their child's doing. You need to be tactical about also harnessing those events as well. And we're not saying sit them down and have a and lecture them for a night for like half an hour about the values of the school, but you do need to utilize those opportunities to communicate this is what we're about, reminders, because parents have a lot going on.
Mm.
And I know that whenever schools have tried to do specific coffee mornings or tried to bring the parents in
Yeah.
for like little chit chats on a Monday,
Yeah.
like parents,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
don't want to do it. They don't want to do
Yeah.
it. So that's not the way. The way that has been most successful is harnessing opportunities where you know they're going to come in the building for a different reason and then saying, oh, while you're here, well, let's also talk about what we're doing at the moment and different things going on and what we want you to be aware of and how we can get your input and get them involved. And it's that's the main thing when it comes to community.
Mm.
I've seen very, it's uncommon for there to be effective outreach events with parents where the sole purpose is to kind of just talk about something going on in school. They don't
Yeah.
when if it do you know what I mean? If it's a trip, then fair enough. If it's
Yeah. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
concert and so on. So
Yeah.
if you want to communicate with parents effectively and build
Yeah.
relationships, you need to be tactical and use the days of the evenings, the mornings where they're
Yeah.
already going to be in the building. And then don't be
Yeah. Yeah.
overwhelming with it, but be quite cute about it. And that's when I've seen it
Yeah.
be most effective to get buy-in in tandem with
That's
any home visits that you can do.
Yeah, that's superb. That's a fantastic because, like you say, people just won't come in for a coffee morning. You have three parents attend a session that you wanted to do on behaviour and systems, etc., or on changing this, and this is superb. You know, like be really, really tactical and know where your touch points are with the parents over the course of the year. That'd be really, and then use that as your springboard. That's a superb idea. Yeah, what do you do? Look, because we have like I know we have a country where essentially, like, and I see it on Twitter all the time, where people sometimes don't feel like they're getting the parental support from the community because they're trying to do a certain thing. Where do you think that's gone wrong?
Oh, what as in where they don't feel like they're getting
Yeah,
parent
well, like,
support?
we've like I hear of places where like parents have built up like a Facebook group because
Yeah,
of
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
certain measure that a school have put in, and it's something. It can
Mm,
be something quite minuscule. Do you know what I mean? Like it could be something small, like having the morning routine or something like that.
mm, mm.
And clearly, where do you think that's gone wrong? Because like obviously those people in those schools are just trying to do something wonderful with those kids. I don't think it comes from I don't know, like if you want to be authoritarian, everyone's clever enough to go and do that somewhere
Mm,
else.
mm, mm,
I've got this thing about teachers, right? Everyone in that building that I work in, if they wanted to be like conniving and authoritarian and wanted power, they could be investment bankers, but like they're not, right? They're not. So
mm,
I honestly, firmly believe like they set out, like some of these schools, they set out to do these wonderful things, like a morning routine which brings everyone together, and they have more. Everyone says good morning, sir, and
mm,
everyone's
mm.
kind of made to do that, and they're trying to teach these like lovely, respectful routines which make the school more joyous. But maybe then there's a backlash. Where do you think that's gone wrong? Why do you think that's happened? Why do you think the breakdowns happened?
Yeah, that's difficult because obviously every situation has its own specifics. I
Mm,
think I think you always need to communicate the why for
yeah,
everything that you're. There needs to be a sound reason for why you're doing a certain thing or why you're bringing in a certain initiative or why you're stopping
yeah,
a certain thing. That needs to be communicated very, very clearly. And if you don't have a why for what you're doing and you can't really think,
mm,
oh, why would, then chance are you shouldn't do it because parents often a lot of parents can see through they'll chat like parents can be challenging if they don't feel like there's a necessity for this new initiative they will
mm.
challenge it
Yeah,
so I
yeah,
think you need to be
yeah,
you can't be a school that just introduces things for the sake of introducing things and then
yeah,
when if you haven't thought it through for example you haven't planned and then things go
yeah,
wrong and now parents get in the backup so there's that side I think there is sometimes schools can take I think schools can sometimes be to blame if they haven't prioritized really explaining their rationales and the
Mm,
whys for what they're doing. I think the
yeah,
other side of it is parents can always be challenging because they're human beings. And I
yeah,
think
yeah,
I think every interaction that a parent
yeah,
has with any member of staff shapes their impression of the school. And it
yeah,
doesn't matter if it's an interaction with their maths teacher, the head teacher, person on the gate, whatever. They will shape, if that's their staff member that they've had an interaction with and it didn't go well or is mishandled or there was animosity or they felt like they were disrespected or whatever, then they
mm,
already build, they will build an impression of the school from that. And then as we're human beings, if you've got a grudge, then you start seeing things through a different lens. So that can also
mm,
happen. So you need
yeah,
you need
yeah,
staff to understand. You need staff to understand the importance of every interaction and
mm,
shaping those interactions so they're always done in a positive way, even when things are bad,
yeah,
because they can have knock-on effects. I think potentially, yeah, I think that's one, and I think also schools sometimes do need to bend over backwards sometimes, in my opinion, if your community as like you need to know the community. You serve the community as a school, in my opinion.
yeah, yeah,
So you need to know the community that you're dealing with, and especially the head teacher needs to know it. The staff needs to be aware of the community, and then there needs to be an understanding of that. I don't know. I can't think of a good example. If you
yeah,
serve a very, I don't know, maybe work in an area that's very religious, for example. Maybe it's
mm,
a very, I don't know, it could be a Muslim area, it could be a very Jewish community, even though the
yeah,
school's not actually a faith school.
yeah,
You would need to understand as much as you can, or at least want to understand what their community, the kind of elements of their community, and then show that you're at least trying to serve them as best you can.
yeah,
And that will get some buy-in. 'Cause I think,
yeah,
and also, I think the final thing I'd say is on this is never forget that everyone's been to school
yeah,
and everyone comes with their own preconceptions, biases, whatever you want to call it, of what
yeah,
school was like for them. Therefore, the teachers that we're trying to be in this day and age, we're probably not the teachers that they experience in school themselves. So
mm,
it was often they think about battles rather than working
yeah,
together when they think about relationship with school. So I don't know, maybe one of those could have been the cause of the breakdown.
yeah. I'm going to just Paul Foz has kind of come in again on the chat. The school pupil parent contract is a big thing. Any side can point
Yeah.
to it in any relevant case.
Yeah.
And then he's also followed with, I've known heads to use at least one or two parent ideas a year to keep them happy. What do
Yeah.
you think about those things?
No, 100%. So
Yeah,
it's yeah, I think we've used the contracts are important.
yeah,
I think, but then there's a balance because I'm yet to see. I think you do it once at the start of the year and then they sign it, everyone's happy.
mm,
But then my question is, if it's that important, how often do you refer back to it at different times? Or how often is it used in meetings or consultations or whatever? Does it reappear at any other point, or is it just signed and forgotten about? So that's a question
yeah,
I would ask any head teacher. Are you just
yeah,
doing it to tick a box, literally, and then does it ever come back? And I think what he was said, I think the bit about using parents' ideas is crucial because you should be doing your surveys. So you do your
yeah,
parent surveys, but you shouldn't just be doing them again to do a tick box thing. Say, oh, we've done our survey, parents are happy, because you're going to get feedback. And then what you should do, you
mm,
should present as a school that is first of all open to feedback, and second of all willing to act upon feedback because parents are key stakeholders. But that should be communicated, I don't know, for your newsletters, could be signage, could be emails, could be whatever
yeah,
kind of correspondence you use to say, right, on the back of the survey, this is what we've heard back from parents. These are some of the suggestions. These are the
yeah,
ones we're going to action and why, and this is what we're going to do. And then later on, in a month, 2 months, 3 months of term, feedback again, say, well, these are the changes we made off the back of your feedback. And the
yeah,
parents that care to read these newsletters will be like, oh, right, okay. So this school
yeah,
does actually care what we think, and they're not just ticking a box for their surveys, and they're
yeah,
showing that they're actually willing to improve the school and take on feedback, and then you start to generate a kind of cycle of positivity amongst the stakeholders.
yeah. I want to take you back to something that you said about like every interaction being like the every touch point with parents, every interaction, every individual interaction will set that tone for parents. And the question I want to ask around that is, do you think there's enough training? Like, look, obviously, if you work in pastoral, then you kind of develop that and you taught that or you have to just work it out really quickly. Do you think there's enough widespread training across that? Like I know
No,
people make phone calls home, etc. No, yeah.
no.
What would you like to see on that then?
Pastoral CPD. So please,
Yeah,
not to plug my own hashtag, but
yeah,
I created this hashtag of pastoral CPD. I'll say created it as in when I first used it on a tweet, whenever it was years ago, there was
yeah,
no one else that had used that hashtag. It was the
yeah.
first time it'd been used. So
That's
then
insane, isn't it?
I just started putting anything that I thought about in terms of, oh, it'd be really good because I remember starting thinking we do all this CPD on teaching and learning, how
Yeah,
to pedagogy, assessment for learning, how we question, how we get feedback, blah, blah, blah. We do a lot of that, which is wonderful, bread and butter. It needs to happen. But
mm,
do we teach how to build positive relationships? Do we teach how to talk to a young person or parents in a way um, that is positive, but also provides a necessary level of challenge and also supports the school culture, blah, blah, blah. Do we teach that or do we just expect adults to be able to do it? And it's
yeah,
often the latter. We often we just assume that adults will be able to just communicate with parents and kids and whoever in a way that's productive. And often that's not the case. And
mm,
and then you think, oh, where's it gone wrong? Oh, wait, hold on. We haven't actually told them what a conversation with a parent looks like. So I think
yeah,
because what you often have is, I don't know what the percent, if I'll do a rough split, I think maybe like 70-30, maybe in terms of 70% of people that work in a school, I'd say would have already natural communication skills in terms of being able to like
yeah,
emotional intelligence, empathy, all that kind of stuff. But you are going to have a minority, I think, of staff for whom that kind of communication, empathy, emotional intelligence does not come naturally to them. It's just not
mm,
how they're wired, or it's not what they've experienced, or it's not what they feel like is part of their job role, so to speak, whatever. So what are we doing for
yeah,
them?
yeah,
So if we're not if they don't have it, we either just accept they don't have it and then just try to just sweep up the mess when things go wrong, or
yeah,
you dedicate time to say, do you know what? No, we think if this is that important, if things are going wrong and the comms to parents is causing more issues, then a leadership team that's got their finger on the pulse should be saying, ideally proactively, maybe reactively, should be then
mm,
saying, right, now hold on, this is what it needs to look like. Not going down scripts and robotic stuff, but in terms of ideas of how to manage these conversations, de-escalation techniques, conflict
yeah,
resolution, what to do in this situation, what to do in a challenging parent. Stay off the emails, get a phone call. Don't
yeah,
like
yeah,
it's little things like
yeah,
that saying don't
yeah,
get in a back and forth email
yeah,
debate with a parent, bring them in and speak face to face. For some
yeah,
people, that's second nature, it's obvious. For others,
yeah,
they'll just think, oh, I need to respond to the email. And they've said a bunch of things. And now I feel like I need to reply. And before you know it, you're having a back and forth email argument with a parent or a carer, and it's going wrong. So
yeah.
it's
That's
things like that. Go on.
that happens to. I mean, you were talking about the 30%. That can happen to anyone in. Like, do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
for
Like, I,
sure.
I find that can happen to anyone. Like, it just goes south. Like, you've picked up the phone. It's happened to me before. I've picked up the phone. So and so has been doing this in my class. All of a sudden, that conversation turns into something more than you. You set your objective was to give information.
Yeah.
That and then all of a sudden your objective is to like basically like somehow meet the needs of this parent who's like bringing everything at you at that point,
Yeah, exactly.
and
Yeah, exactly.
I've just found like like, I've been doing it for 14 years like and like I'm all right with people, so I can kind of work my way around. Sometimes it's not gone right, and hang up and have
Yeah,
to go
yeah.
away and really think about it, but and then ring back again. But I don't know, like you say, this pastoral CPD is like no one ever sat me down and went, right, I'm going to make a parental phone call now. We're going to do it on the live speaker, the loudspeaker,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you're just going to listen through how I do it, what I said, and we're going to talk about it afterwards. No one sat me down on my training to do that. No one, and
Yep.
no one actually has
Yep.
done that ever in my career. And I find like I'm a head of department, and what I tend to do is try and if someone's in the office, I won't send them out the office before I have the conversation. I'll have the
Mm.
conversation because they've almost got some live CPD with me. Do you know, like they can
Yeah,
hear
for sure.
me
Yeah, yeah, for
working
sure.
through. Like I know I'm going to have a difficult conversation, and the person's like, "Oh no, shall I leave?" I'm like, "No, no, it's all right. Just stay, listen." Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
yeah, for sure.
and hopefully I'll be able to do something that you haven't seen before because I work with quite a young department in terms of experience. But like, I think that is just too important to leave to chance, isn't it?
That's exactly, it is leaving to chance. It is. And I think it's
Yeah,
never, Yeah, I've not known many schools that do prioritize it, which is what I was kind of like doing a solo campaign for through my Twitter
Yeah,
hashtag. Being like, this is what we need. We need to think about the kind of the crucial points, the crucial kind of pivotal points that could either go south or be really good. And we need to think, right, what do we want them to look like? And let's be very explicit to our staff about this is how we want it to be and take their ideas as well, because obviously we can all contribute. And there'll
yeah,
be people, like you said, there'll be some people who may think, yeah, well, of course, this is obvious. But you need to recognize that for some others, it's not, especially if
yeah,
you're new, if you're an ECT and you've never done a phone call to a parent to communicate about a child's poor choices in your lesson. If you've never done that before, then you're gonna be nervous on your first. You need someone to give you a pep
mm,
talk, or you need to be not need. You'd benefit from seeing someone else do it first or hearing someone else do it first. But not enough thought goes into that sometimes.
yeah,
And before you know it, you're just creating issues for your
yeah,
own staff members that
yeah,
if you had the forethought, you would think, you know what? Let's actually make this part of the ECT training schedule. Let's
yeah,
put that in.
yeah,
Why are we
yeah,
only talking about how to make sure they hold their whiteboards up correctly? Why are we not talking
yeah,
about how to
yeah,
de-escalate, how to have negative and positive conversation with parents, how often to communicate, all that soft stuff, the
yeah,
personal, the human side, because
yeah,
I think a lot of people feel like they have their own perception of what it means to be a teacher, and they start thinking, oh, I'm a teacher now, so I need to in this way and speak in this way. And
yeah,
sometimes they need someone who's more experienced to just remind them we're humans first. So we
yeah,
need to always approach any conversation with parents in a human way rather than teacher parent. Let's go with a human interaction first, and then we can talk about the actual kind of, well, I'm a teacher, you're the parent,
mm,
we need to work together, blah blah blah. But there aren't many schools that are doing that, which is fine because
yeah.
it's very time consuming. But I think any school that does would reap the benefits for sure.
So here's a question: do you think too much pastoral is left to chance?
Ah, what in schools in general?
In schools in general that you've worked in, right? I've been working quite a few schools, and I don't know. It's just a question that I have on my mind
Yeah,
sometimes. You know,
yeah,
is this just? It's just too much of this left to chance. Like like you say, there's no pastoral CPD. There's like sometimes the systems for dealing with things aren't codified enough. Is too, but on the flip side, I see the other side of the coin, which is like maybe some of it needs to be left to chance. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. No,
is too
agreed.
much left to
I'm with you.
chance? If we codify too much, is it, if you go to a school which has got like hardcore codification of how pastoral systems work, how pastoral conversations work, is there too much left to chance?
Um, Interesting. So I think the when I've seen it work the best, you you can codify and you can say this is the process, but even in your policy, you state that reasonable adjustments, context specific adjustments, however you want to phrase them, will be
Hmm.
made in if the situation warrants it. Better wording than that, but you account for
Yeah.
it. You say, yeah, we know that often, I don't know, it could be things like, I don't know, it could be conduct in the playground. I think a lot of schools
Yeah.
behavior in unregulated environments, like at break time, lunchtime, before school, after school, I think a lot of
Mm,
that is left to chance. And I think a lot of that is
mm,
reactive. I think a
yeah.
lot of schools don't spend any time trying to teach students about how to behave in those kind of environments, how to behave in the playground, how to behave um, outside of school, how to behave here, how to behave there. I think a lot of it is left to chance, and then you're just reacting to when things have gone wrong. But
Mm,
when you see it work well, is that you're teaching the positive behaviors. You
mm,
teach it like it's a curriculum. It's a behavior. You can have a behavior curriculum, so to speak, where you're saying this is what I don't know, this is what kindness looks like in the playground. These are things that you should be doing, and these are things that you should be avoiding. Well, you want to
yeah.
kind of speak more, but you want to speak positively throughout, in my opinion. You don't want to be like, don't do. You want to be,
Yeah.
this is what you need to do, you need to do. And I think
Yeah.
when you do that, it means you've got more to back up your case when things go wrong because the kid
Yeah.
knows already. They knew what was expected of them.
Yeah.
I'm always of the opinion whenever things have gone wrong, I always ask the question in my mind or directly to the staff member or to the child, do you know what was expected? Like,
Yeah.
did you know what was expected and therefore you made a poor choice, or did you not even know what was expected? Because if
Yeah.
it's the latter, then we have ignorance in the
Yeah.
kind of in its purest form, which is they just
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
know. that
Yeah.
wasn't okay, and that you have
Yeah.
to manage
Yeah.
that differently.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
When
different,
kids,
isn't it? Yeah. That's a
when
learning
kids
age.
behave,
Yeah.
indeed, exactly.
Yeah.
You have defiance, you have ignorance, or you can have kind of like opportunism. That's
Yeah.
usually where a child's kind of behavior sits. Either they
Yeah.
didn't know, or they were trying their luck, or they knew it was wrong and they just went against it. And I
Yeah.
think you need to assess that first before you just go hell for leather and trying to deal with the situation. But coming
Yeah.
back to the chance thing, I think in a lot of schools, yes, because
Yeah.
they don't dedicate time to teach positive. Some schools don't dedicate time to teach routines, to teach
Yeah.
norms, to teach what the expectations are at different points in the day, not to turn kids into robots, but to set a
Yeah.
standard.
Yeah. I
To
was going to
set a
touch on that.
standard.
I was going
Yeah.
to touch on that. What do you say to someone? Oh, you're just creating robots. If you expect them to do this and sit like this and go to break time and do this, like, what do you say to those people? I think it's because it's a fine line, isn't it? At that point.
Yeah, it's a very fine line. And
Yeah.
I've worked in a school where people think, like an external observer would think it was like almost like military kind of thing. I've
Mm.
worked in schools like that. But then when you actually walk around the school and interact with people, it's nothing of the sort in terms of how the
Yeah.
kids actually are. And because we spent so much time explaining why, and it always
Mm.
linked back to, yes, our values, but also outcomes for the children. We could always link it. If we can link it back to why it would boost your positive outcomes and life chances, no one can argue with you if it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
What you don't want is routines for the sake of routine. And then when someone asks, yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? And if you can't bring it back cogently to why it matters, then you need to
Yeah.
scrap that. You need to
Yeah.
scrap it. So whatever system you decide for your own specific context,
Yeah.
like if it does look like you're turning into kids into like if it looks overbearing sometimes,
Yeah.
if you can justify and say why there is no why I don't know, I can think of like everyone I don't want to get into a debate about corridors or anything like that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um that's always quite contentious. But then
Yeah.
you have to look at school settings. Some schools have very narrow corridors, some schools
Mm.
have very wide corridors. So in a very
Yeah.
narrow corridor, you need to have some order in your corridors. Otherwise, it's carnage.
Yeah.
In a school that's got acres of space in the corridors, you don't need the same level of kind of like what word do I want? Same level of formation, so to speak, to create a safe
Mm.
environment. So it's
Yeah.
all context specific. So you got people from
Yeah.
different schools saying you don't need this. I'm like, have you seen the
Yeah.
school? There's no space.
Yeah, yeah. The nuance there. The nuance there is like, oh, have you seen that they're like robots walking down the corridor? Yeah, because there's like a meter to walk down. Like, there's a couple of meters to walk down. Yeah, yeah, I get it. That's really, really insightful. Actually, I really like that idea. Like, look at the context. If they need silent corridors, they need silent corridors. But if they can't justify that, then that's a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, if you
Look,
can't justify it,
yeah, yeah.
no, go on,
Um,
go on, go on.
I hate to break it. We're gonna have to do a bit of news, but like I hate to interrupt the conversation because I think it's the right time to have news. So should we put it on hold there? We'll listen to the news and we'll pick back up with that when we come back from the news. So we're back after the news, guys.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading. Introducing My New Term, the revolutionary technology application connecting schools and candidates directly. Whether you're a school seeking to streamline your recruitment process or a candidate searching for your next role in education, My New Term has the solution. Developed by a former teacher, the technology at My New Term now connects tens of thousands of candidates with schools every month by digitizing the recruitment process. As a candidate, you can search for jobs, set up recommended jobs, and save time by applying directly to schools via a standardized online process. No more completing manual and repetitive application forms. Employers can streamline processes and save time utilizing the leading applicant tracking system for schools and multi-academy trusts. Recruitment in education has been broken for too long. My New Term is on a mission to change just that. Visit mynewterm.com to learn more, search all the latest opportunities, or schedule a demo. My New Term, shaping the future of education recruitment.
Hi everyone, it's Tom here from Teachers Talk Radio, just dropping by to tell you about our annual history teaching extravaganza, Teachers Talk History, which is coming at you live in Manchester on the 21st of September. The tickets are completely free for classroom teachers, amazing speakers, brilliant contributors, and a fantastic opportunity to network with fellow professionals. Grab your free ticket today at ttradio.org/events, and we will see you there.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
The BBC covers a story on teacher retention issues, focusing on women in their 30s who, it says, are the biggest single group leaving teaching. More than 9,000 of them left teaching in England in 2022 to 23, compared with just 3,400 men of similar age. In a report called Missing Mothers, researchers urge more family-friendly policies to halt the trend. The report found workload, balancing work with family life, and maternity pay all need to be addressed. Research was carried out by think tank The New Britain Project and involved interviews with 383 women who had either stayed in teaching or left the profession. The research comes out after government promised to recruit an extra 6,500 teachers, but the peer review body report warned only 3 subjects had recruited sufficient numbers of teachers into initial training for secondary. Maternity pay is highlighted in the BBC report and is described as poor compared to other jobs, including those within the NHS, civil service and major supermarkets. The report from the think tank calls for teachers to have the same maternity pay as civil servants in the Department for Education, 26 weeks at full pay. Further details can be found on the BBC News website, and the story has prompted plenty of comment on social media. The Guardian covers the story of a head teacher with multiple sclerosis who has been paid damages in what the paper describes as a landmark disability discrimination case. The head teacher's request to postpone an inspection due to a relapse in symptoms was refused by Ofsted. The watchdog apologised for the distress caused and has since agreed to introduce mandatory equality, diversity and inclusion training for inspectors. It did say that the request to defer was refused in line with Ofsted policy, but that reasonable adjustments had been made during the inspection. The case itself was settled out of court. The BBC also reports that the government has shelved £1.3 billion of funding that had been promised by the Conservatives for tech and AI projects. It includes £800 million for the creation of a supercomputer at Edinburgh University. A university spokesperson told BBC News that Professor Sir Peter Matheson, Principal and Vice-Chancellor, is seeking an urgent meeting with Secretary of State Peter Kyle. There are only a small number of such powerful machines in the world, with an earlier version housed in Bristol. The new funding was announced last year, and Edinburgh University had already spent £31 million building housing for it. The machine would have been 50 times faster than any current computers in the UK. Finally, FE Week focuses on Team UK competitors' final push to be at their peak for the World Skills International competition in France next month. The 31 skilled young people have just over a month left before flying to Lyon, just days after the Paralympic closing ceremony in Paris. They hope to bring home gold, silver and bronze medals across 27 skills, including cybersecurity, digital construction and hairdressing. The Olympic-style regime involves specialist training with former medalists, remote assessments and international pressure tests. The 31-strong team will battle against 1,500 global counterparts from 65 countries during the competition between the 10th and 15th of September. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Hello, we're back with Khalil Rouse and we're talking all things behaviour and pastoral. I'm just going to read out one of the messages from Judy. She says, "Your guest is amazing. It's wonderful listening to his experience in addressing the needs of young people and putting in place strategies to deal with this. Getting parents on board is key, but it's always a struggle as they themselves have had a bad experience at school. Also, it's quite difficult for some parents to understand their child may have issues. It's breaking down the stigma." And I think that's a really nuanced comment at the end. It's about like kind of breaking down those issues, breaking down the stigma, and then like working with that parent. I think Khalil's given us loads of ideas already on how to do that with parents. Are you there, Khalil?
I am there. I don't want to speak because
How you doing?
I'm very embarrassed.
Oh,
Very
no
embarrassed.
problem. It's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, I'm very,
Yeah.
very embarrassed. Judy, I do apologize. I don't actually know what happened there. And then
I think
I was literally sweating trying to delete this message, and it didn't delete. So yeah, let's
it's no,
move on.
we
Let's
all
move on.
know it was a hands up. So yeah, so I want to come on to this, right? I think like we've kind of laid the foundations for this question in what we've talked about with the values and then making choices and then justifying what you do. So let's go down this route, right? We've got this idea of like two systems emerging on Twitter, right? Haven't we? Where one is like all about restorative justice and like making the kids see what they've done is wrong and having these conversations, etc. And then we've got the other one, which is punitive. I want to know whether that argument actually exists and whether it's just a massive false dichotomy that we've all fallen into the trap of. And like obviously like you've worked in a range of schools, right? And I've worked in a range of schools, and people who are listening have worked in a range of schools. We've got these like strict schools who are like, yeah, we give them detentions for this and blah 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 blah. And then you see like that relayed onto like platforms and social media and stuff like that. And then you see schools which, oh yeah, well, you know, I work in a school, we gave them a cup of tea and a cuddle. And you can't, I want to know whether that's real. I want to know whether we're all falling into this whole polarization thing. And actually, if you go to those strict schools, maybe they're doing some of the stuff which is restorative. And if you go to those restorative schools, maybe, do you know, what do you think about that?
Yeah. So there is a minority of schools where they
Mm,
I know of schools that decided to go down a purely restorative relational approach where they stopped doing detentions and everything was more about everything was more about we need to restore, we need to restore. We don't It's not about the consequence or the detention. It's about
mm,
restoration always and nothing else. So
yeah,
those schools do exist.
yeah,
I don't agree with them. Those schools do
yeah,
exist. On the other side of the spectrum, you do have schools that don't place that much emphasis on restoration and that much emphasis on restoration, so to speak. And they do exist, but I think the majority of the schools, as is often the case, take, if they're working well, they take the best of both worlds. And the
mm,
two, it is definitely a false dichotomy. Schools are not just one or the other. I think the
mm,
best schools have a blended. I think the best schools, I think you need consequences. My personal opinion is you need consequences where even you're not expecting, like, it doesn't need to be a consequence that the kids don't hate detention. Like, detentions don't have to be an unpleasant, they don't have
mm,
to be an unpleasant place. They shouldn't be a fun place. They shouldn't
yeah,
be like a unpleasant, when you're there, we're going to talk to you like you don't matter. Like, it shouldn't be that. But there should be something so so people know they were held to account. This
mm,
happened, you made the wrong choice. According to our policy, that means you need to have a certain consequence. We've decided that this consequence is fitting for it. That's one. I think you do need to have that element where it's appropriate, but you
yeah,
also need to assess the situation and say, is this a situation where at the heart of it, there's been a breakdown of relationship? Is this a
yeah,
situation where at the heart of it, there needs to be some sort of resolution? And if there is, that needs to happen as well, because there's no
mm,
point just doing the consequence and then leaving the rest again up to chance. And then
yeah,
the same incident happens again, and you're doing another consequence. Before you know it, things have escalated. So
yeah,
there needs to be a blended approach. And again,
yeah,
if you're going to go down restorative, if you're going to formally have restorative practices in your school, you need to be very specific about when to use them, what they look like, what to avoid, what to do,
mm,
what are the pros. Like, you need to teach it. You can't just
yeah,
expect people to know what a good restorative
yeah.
conversation looks like. It
Can
needs
we
to be
unpack that?
modeled. You
Can you?
happily, I've done a CP.
Could you
I created a
yeah.
CPD on it.
Great. Could you give us an example where it's like done, like let's say, like where it's been done really well,
What? Okay.
like
So you've got
like where
which
you've seen
type?
it? Yeah.
Because
Let's go.
you've got.
Go on.
Go on.
But like, I don't know. Do we go for a scenario? I'm just thinking. Yeah. Where
Yeah.
like
So
let's go for
you've
a
either
scenario.
got
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
you've either
Go
got
on.
situations where so you've got two types of restoratives often. You've got
Yeah.
restorative where it's trying to rebuild the relationship between a staff member and a pupil, or a
Yeah.
pupil and a staff member, whichever way around you want to look at it. Or you've
Yeah.
got restoratives where you're trying to where it's been like a child on child issue or a peer group issue and you're trying to restore that. So
Mm,
which one do you think is more pertinent? I want to talk about staff and pupil personally,
go on.
but
Let's go
if
for
is
that
that
one. Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do that. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've seen restoratives between staff and pupil go exceptionally well, and I've seen them go exceptionally poorly. I think
Mm,
when you set the scene for restorative conversations where it's to do with usually, I don't know, maybe the child hasn't been an ongoing issue with the child's behavior in lessons, or the child doesn't want to go into classroom because they hate that teacher, or the child's consistently messing around because of XYZ reason. When you've got that kind of situation, it's really important that you communicate to both parties separately prior to the restorative so that they know what the purpose is and what to expect. That's
mm,
important because if either the child or the staff member goes into that thinking it's one thing when it's actually another in terms of the purpose behind it, then you get a mismatch and you end up with conflicts again.
yeah.
So you need, as a school, you need to define the purpose of the restorative, restoring relationships, rebuilding relationships, um, communicating expectations, letting people, both the child and the staff member, say their piece. I think that's really
Mm,
important. So yeah, I literally created a training session on this, and I delivered it
yeah.
recently,
Yeah.
and I pretty much put down the kind of the best practice and also the pitfalls to avoid.
Yeah.
And I think best practice I've been speaking about is making sure that the staff member, there's always a mediator, always. You never
Mm,
have, it starts with that. You never have a restorative where it's just the affected staff member and the affected student on their own without a mediator. There needs to be a
yeah.
mediator. There needs to be, and that mediator can't just be anyone. In my
Yeah.
opinion, and I'm not saying this is the only way it needs to be, in my opinion, the mediator should be someone who's got a good relationship with the child. Because at the end of the day,
Mm,
everything we do in school, even when it's discipline or whatever else, is all about the child. We do it for children. So the child needs to feel like they're going into that setting with two adults that at least they can look at one of them and know that they've got a good relationship with that staff member so they
yeah.
can feel more at ease. I think that's really
Yeah.
important as a first
Yeah.
step.
Yeah.
Then, once you're in the actual restorative space and you're trying to address what's happened, it's really important that the tone is forward looking. And what's even more important is that it's not another opportunity to reprimand, discipline, or tell the child off for what's already happened. That is not
Mm,
the purpose of a restorative. Yes, you need to reflect. You need to ask the right questions in the right ways, but it needs to be a case of going back and seeing what happened. And then it's more about, well, okay, what can be done now to either avoid it happening again, or what could have happened to avoid it happening again, or
yeah.
happening in the first place. Forward tone in terms of what does a staff member want from the child in terms of positively, what do they want the child to do in future to avoid this from happening? And also, what does a child, if anything, want from the staff member? Because you need to give
Mm,
both parties an opportunity to speak. And the way I've always ran restoratives, I've always deliberately asked the child to speak first. And I've always said, what's happened? How have we got to this point? And I've given the child an opportunity because they are outnumbered in that space. And if you
mm,
start the conversation with staff members just saying, well, this is what happened and this, the child is just going to either coil up and not want to speak or get very defensive, and then it turns into a that's not what happened, that's not what happened, yeah but, and
mm,
then it just turns into a conflict again. So I think the kind of the best advice I can give is, in my opinion, get the child to speak first, because often things get teased out of that the teacher
yeah.
didn't even know about.
Yeah.
Often
Yeah.
we as teaching a class of 30 kids, one child's done something quite significant. We don't know the build up. We just usually see the end result. And then
Mm,
we're getting annoyed because the child's flipped a chair, sworn, whatever. And then when you
Yeah.
actually unpick it, you realize, oh wow, this happened prior, this happened prior, this happened prior, and then the conversation becomes a different one. So
Yeah.
I say do that, and I think um, another thing I'd finish on is never ask why questions to a
Mm.
child. Why did you? Why did you? Why did you this? Why did you that? Because that invokes a very defensive again, a
Yeah.
very defensive approach, a very defensive response from the child. So I think your questioning, I wrote a slide that had all kind of questions that you should be asking. Your questions
Yeah.
should be open, neutral, and
Yeah.
and not accusatory in any way, so that they feel like they're in this space not as an equal in terms of
Yeah.
status, but an equal in terms of a right to speak their mind and feel like they're being respected in that in the restorative space. And I think
Yeah.
when that happens, you often have more positive outcomes. And then the final thing I'd say on it, I should say, is if the child or the staff member is not ready to have the restorative conversation because they're still annoyed, peeved about the situation, they're still emotional about it, my advice is don't have the restorative
Yeah.
yet.
Just leave it. Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
not have it yet,
Yeah.
but have a
Yeah.
plan for what
Yeah.
happens in the interim. Don't
Yeah.
just let the child go back in the classroom. But I'd say
Yeah.
you need to think tactically. Don't do it if the child's still on level 100 or the staff member is still on level 100. Don't
Yeah.
do it. It's not worth it. I
So
think those are my tips.
that's great. So now I know like what a great restorative looks like, right? And we've established that both schools have both, right? You don't just have to be restorative, you just don't have to be sanctions based. So what does a great sanction look like?
A great sanction. A great sanction.
Yeah.
Um, it's
Like,
all in the build up.
yeah,
It's
go
all
on.
in the build up. In terms of whenever I've spoken to teachers about consequences and getting to the point of having to give a sanction, I've always said the sanction, unless the behavior was like spontaneous and extreme, I
Hmm.
believe that sanctions should always be the child should know that it's on the way. The child should be
Hmm.
given information, whether it's their choices, be informed of their choices. If you need to give them warnings, but you need to not just give a warning. You need to tell them what you want them to do. There's no point just saying stop doing that. Now you've got your warning. It's more about I need you to sit down and get on with the work, or I need you to face the front. That's your warning. You need to face the front from now on. Otherwise, you will get a consequence. The
Hmm.
language is very important because what often happens is if kids either feel like they didn't know the sanction was coming, or they feel like it's unfair,
Hmm.
then that's where you get conflict.
Yeah, the
And
conflict. Yeah.
the the best
Yeah.
sanctions are ones where you've tried your best as a teacher to
Yeah.
get the child to make the right choice. And you've
Yeah.
clearly been trying to do that, whether it's a little word
Yeah.
on the side, whether it's talking to them outside and saying, I need you to do X, Y, Z. If you end up doing ABC, then this is what's going to happen. And
Yeah.
that, if you say that to the child privately, not in front of an audience, privately, and then the child goes back into the classroom and does ABC, and then you say, well, I did say you do, if you do ABC, this happens, here's your consequence, you've got a less chance of the child having any grounds to then be like, you're treating me unfairly. Because
Hmm.
what you get is when children feel like either they've been unfairly treated or it comes as a shock and they didn't know the sanction was going to come because they're like, oh, now there's your detention, and they're like, what? I didn't
Yeah.
even know that even know that I was on a
Yeah.
warning or whatever else. So I
Yeah.
think there needs to be very clear communication. If
Yeah.
things are going downhill, the teacher needs to be very clear with the child, away from everyone else, and take them to one side and say, listen, these are things I need you to do from this moment on.
Hmm.
And if you do these things, there'll be no issues.
Yeah.
However, if you make a choice to do another thing, then I will now have to enforce the consequences because I've tried. Do you get the
Yeah.
work? Do you know what you're doing?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. Do you understand the work? If the
So
answer
you,
is yes, then crack on with it, mate.
yeah. So you've done the great lead up, right? And then the wrong choice is made anyway. What does a great detention look like then?
A great detention.
What does
Wowzers.
a great detention look like? Because look, this is one of these things that once again, like I don't know, sometimes I feel like it might be left to chance here. What does a great detention look like? Like sometimes we execute and then like they go in the room and we've already seen the Twitter conversations about like isolation rooms and detention rooms where
Mm.
kids are, do you know, things like that. So what does a great detention look like in a school? Like, and it's just interesting to get your thoughts on this. Like, what does it look
Uh,
like in a school which is full of
consistent.
joy? Go on.
It looks consistent.
Mm.
So in terms of the detention is ran in the same way. In a night, like you've got human beings and things can happen and like different
Yeah.
things can happen on the day, but there should be a system for it so that kids go in knowing what to expect and know again what is expected of them. And it's very clearly explained to children prior to them going into the room.
Yeah.
I think a good, like a inverted commas, good detention is one that's calm and the
Mm.
atmosphere is one of they're behaving well, they're not just mucking about because they should be taking it should be a space that where they take it seriously. And then in terms of what the kids actually do in the detention, well that's up for plentiful debate because some people are talking about
Yeah.
people talk about you got to make them do homework, which I disagree with. I don't agree with
Yeah.
them doing homework. I don't agree with making kids do homework in detentions. I feel like that's I don't like if they want to do their homework, fine, but forcing them to do their homework, I don't personally agree with. Um,
Why?
I don't know. I feel like it. No, forcing them to do homework, I don't agree with. If they want to do their
Yeah.
homework, fine.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think saying,
Okay.
I think it's because at the end, for me personally, like you've kept the child back. Be realistic about this. You kept the child back for a half an hour to an hour. They're already peeved that they're behind. Like I think you need to have a minimum expectation of what you want. Whether it's you need them to, I don't know, complete some sort of reflection where they write down why they came to detention and what they should have done, blah blah blah. You could do that, but kids don't often take it seriously. You could do
Mm.
that. But I think the minimum expectation should be around conduct. And I think the
Yeah.
minimum expectation should be like you need to conduct yourself in a certain way. If you need to do work in order to conduct yourself in that way, then you're doing work. I think you
Mm.
should have like
Yeah.
sheets on hand, like busy work,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like I don't know, not saying writing lines, but like some sort of
Yeah.
busy work. It could be academic work, but not the specific homework for tomorrow. But if a
Yeah.
child, for me personally, if a child can sit in the room for half an hour absolutely silently, not fall asleep, and not disturb the room, I don't think you should pick a battle to then try and get the child to do more
Yeah.
if they're already
Yeah.
not causing any issues. But I think
Yeah.
if the child is causing issues, well, now you're asking the question, well, why are they doing that? Are they bored? Do they need to be engaged in another activity? If they do, we need to be proactive and have something on hand. This is what you
Mm.
now need to do. Here's some times tables for you to practice little year 7. Here's some algebra work for you to practice little year 10. Get on with it. And that will
Yeah.
keep you quiet.
Yeah.
And if I've given you a chance to now conduct yourself better in the detention, and you're still messing about and disturbing it, then you've got to go
Yeah.
and we reset this detention and you're going to do it properly next time because I'm not having anyone in the room who's been given ample opportunity to conduct themselves correctly and they've got no excuse besides defiance. And if
Yeah.
that's the case, they need to be removed from the detention room. Otherwise, everyone else sees it and it just lowers the standard for everyone else.
Yeah. So it's
Um,
standards. The objective is
it's
standards and maintain.
objective standards.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it should, whatever your minimum expectation
Yeah.
is, you need to
Yeah.
stick to that. And if people aren't
Yeah.
meeting it, you give them as much of an opportunity reasonably to be able to meet it. Give them some help. If you need to sit with them, change the seating plan, move them, separate them, like all that stuff. Be strategic. Give them an ample opportunity. If they still can't meet the standards, then they got to go. And then
Yeah.
they reset
Yeah.
and they do it again another day.
Yeah. Great. Look, I've got one more question for you. I'm going to run some ads and I'm going to come back with that question. All right.
No worries.
This show
Great.
is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading. Introducing My New Term, the revolutionary technology application connecting schools and candidates directly. Whether you're a school seeking to streamline your recruitment process or a candidate searching for your next role in education, My New Term has the solution. Developed by a former teacher, the technology at My New Term now connects tens of thousands of candidates with schools every month by digitizing the recruitment process. As a candidate, you can search for jobs, set up recommended jobs, and save time by applying directly to schools via a standardized online process. No more completing manual and repetitive application forms. Employers can streamline processes and save time utilizing the leading applicant tracking system for schools and multi-academy trusts. Recruitment in education has been broken for too long. My New Term is on a mission to change just that. Visit mynewterm.com to learn more, search all the latest opportunities, or schedule a demo. My New Term, shaping the future of education recruitment.
Hi everyone, it's Tom here from Teachers Talk Radio, just dropping by to tell you about our annual history teaching extravaganza, Teachers Talk History, which is coming at you live in Manchester on the 21st of September. The tickets are completely free for classroom teachers, amazing speakers, brilliant contributors, and a fantastic opportunity to network with fellow professionals. Grab your free ticket today at ttradio.org/events, and we will see you there.
Right, so we're back. Khalil, one last question. So we've talked about like the kind of the underpinning values of your behavior system. We've talked about the kind of the kind of what happens if it goes wrong. Let's talk about what happens if it goes right. What do you think informs the best positive parts of the system where you've seen it go really, really right? I mean, what I'm asking here is it all right to, like, you know, get kids to like earn points to buy an iPad? Like,
Oh, I
is it
see. Gotcha.
is that all right? Is it all right to reward things with like material value? Is it all right? What does it look like when great behavior systems have brought joy to schools and there's like tons of positivity? What does it look like when the kids are getting it right?
Yeah. Can I just quickly, because before I
Go on.
answer that, just because there was a message in the chat from Paul,
Yeah, from Paul.
who's
Yeah,
asked, yeah, so just to quickly address it with my kind of my safeguarding hat on. So he's
yeah.
asked, is there ever a situation when it's okay to video a classroom and the behavior of a child? Do you think showing them this as part of restoration would ever work? It's a delicate one. I think anything where it comes to videoing, I think my best advice on anything like that would be you need to get permission from the parents and carers prior to doing any kind of videoing of anything. Then you also need to ask yourself, well, why are you doing it? Is it necessary? If
Yeah.
this is the only way, if, for example, I can only think of a situation where facts are being disputed. Maybe like, well, I kind of think how that would, like CCTV, for example, you would use if parents said no, it didn't happen, you'll say no, it did happen. They say no, it didn't, and you have to prove it. But I think if maybe if a child was behaving a certain way in lessons and then was telling a different story to their parents or carers, and the parents were believing the child, and the teacher's saying no, that's not how it's happening, and the parents saying I don't believe you, you're lying, then you'll get into a situation where it's a case of how else do we demonstrate this? If I've never done it, but you need to get absolute kind of permission from, first of all, the parent of that child. And then you need to ask yourself, well, who else is in the video? Because if it's a
Yeah,
classroom, you've got a whole
yeah,
class of 29 others for whom you need to speak to their parents. Like it would need to be, you
yeah,
couldn't pitch it. It's very, like, I would avoid it personally, because
yeah. I'd avoid it. Yeah.
the kind of what the word, the covering of your back that you'd need to do so that no one could say you've acted in an improper fashion is so extensive, because everyone would just have questions. Why are you videoing? Why are you recording? What, for the
Mm,
purpose of looking at one child's behavior? That seems strange. Like
yeah.
that, I wouldn't, I wouldn't advocate going down that path. I feel like it opens a can of worms. Um,
Yeah.
I feel like I think you could, if you ever have a factual dispute around a child's behavior, I think you can go down the kind of witness statement route instead, where you kind
Mm,
of collate information um, from other people in the classroom separately, and you present that. And all you can do is present to the parent, this is what's happened, and these are what
yeah.
people are saying. I'm not going to tell you who said what, but this is what people are saying. And you've got to believe us at a certain point. Like we are adult to adult here, blah, blah, blah. So I'd say
Yeah.
from the steer away from the videoing, because in order to do so, you would need to speak and get written consent from too many people. And then the way the video is used has to be so controlled. Like there's too many things
Mm,
that you need to get right there. I'd say
yeah.
avoid it. But
Yeah.
yes, yeah, that's so though, back to your point on the
Yeah.
positives. Now
Yeah.
my thing about positives is I've yet to work in a school. I feel like we've nailed the positives and celebration of positives. And by that, I mean, there always seems to be a forgotten population of kids who silently or quietly or in the background just get things right day in
Yeah.
day in day out, and they're not singing and dancing about it. They're not going above and beyond, but they're just meeting expectations every day. Oh, I think you need like a really effective behavior system, not reward system, so to speak, will find a way to reward them as well as the ones that are going above and beyond and all the bells and the whistles. One thing, shout out to, I think it was, I don't know if Tom HB is still working for Teacher Talk Radio. I don't think he is anymore. But
Mm.
Tom HB was someone who was involved in Teacher Talk Radio, and I was involved in it. He was one of the founding members, so to speak. I think he was someone who tweeted about how his school at the moment, they obviously monitor, they put points on the system, but like negative points, positive points, blah, blah, blah. But what they've also got, which I thought was incredible, is that their system, if a child goes the whole day without getting a negative point, then that automatically gives them 1 or 2 positive points. And
Mm.
I thought that's delightful. I thought
Yeah.
I like that, because what that will do is it will recognize the kids that are just getting it right without the bells and the whistles. And then I think that's the starting point, rewarding people that are getting it right silently. And then what you do with those points is something else. I think you need to, like, the rewards need to be something that kids would value. That
Mm.
doesn't mean they need to be things that are valuable. And I think then you need to be quite cute and smart about what are the rewards you give to kids without saying, oh yeah, when you do really well, you should be getting some expensive
Yeah.
gift, or you should be getting like some sort of monetary prize. Like, you shouldn't, I don't think you should put those things on a pedestal. So I don't think it sends the right message.
Yeah.
Rewarding like high value rewards, like expensive gifts or flashy gifts. I don't agree with that personally. I think you should just give them things that would make their school day just a little bit nicer. Stuff like, for example, skipping the lunch queue, getting like
Mm.
a lunch kip scoop, skipping a lunch queue, for example,
Yeah.
or having access to certain privileges in their breaks and lunch times that other people don't have access to if they don't meet that criteria. Whether it's your table tennis, maybe it's activity studios, maybe it's, like, I know a school that you're able to bring they've got like a stereo in the like dance studio, and it's a
Yeah.
duty point, and you're able to go in and listen to music in the dance studio at
That's
break and
amazing.
lunchtime, and that's a reward. So
Yeah.
it's not adding, because what you don't want is a rewards policy that influences budgetary decisions. In
Yeah.
an ideal world,
Yeah.
you want a rewards policy where the kids can, it'll make people's lives, just their school day, just a little bit brighter, because kids don't, I don't think kids expect or need flashy things from their school. If they
Mm.
feel like they can look at their mate and be like, haha, I was able to skip the queue, or haha, I'm able to play football or play a sport after school in like a reward, like a activity that other
Mm.
people can't because they
Yeah.
haven't got the behavior right.
Yeah.
That's all it takes. I think people just need to feel like they've got something a little bit special that's different, and
Yeah.
then they buy into it. I think they don't need to have
It's a
anything.
motivation cycle, doesn't it? Then as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's brilliant. It's really good. Right.
Without setting them up to feel like whenever things go well, you get rewarded with money and
Yeah.
flashy gifts. Like, you don't want them feeling like that's not how the world works.
No. No. And it's
So you
not
want to
until
you want to exactly, you want to recognize it, but not in a
yeah.
way that works against how you want them to see the real world. If that makes, I know it's a bit more wishy-washy, but
Yeah.
that's my thinking on it.
Amazing, Khalil. We're gonna have to wrap up there because that brings us
What a
to pretty
shame.
much 9:30. But that's been amazing. That conversation, your insights have been really, really powerful, and like you know your stuff, and it's just so good to mine that and harvest that. And I've learned so much, and hopefully that our listeners have learned tons as well. Listen to you. Thank you, Paul Foz, for like chiming in. Thank you, Judy, for chiming in, and thank you for joining the conversation. Really enjoyed today's show. And I'll see you in a month for the next show. And thank you all. Remember, keep tuning in to all of the other shows on TTR. And a big shout out to Khalil Rouse for joining me today. Thank you so much.
Cheers, thank you, Beatrice. I've
Bye-bye.
massively enjoyed it. All the best, everyone. Bye bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
You've You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.